I hadn't seen Connor in almost 6 years. We were childhood friends, practically inseparable growing up. Skateboarding in the cul-de-sac, camping in our backyards, staying up too late watching horror movies that ruined our sleep for weeks. But like most friendships, life pulled us in different directions: college, jobs, moving to different cities. When he messaged me out of the blue, I didn't even recognize the number. "Hey man, it's Connor. Visiting my folks for a few weeks. Want to catch up?" Something about it felt nostalgic, familiar, and a little sad. So I said yes. Connor's parents still lived in the same house we used to hang out in, the big brick colonial at the end of the street, tucked behind a line of old pines. It hadn't changed much. Same rusting mailbox. Same chipped white shutters. When I pulled into the driveway, I almost expected our 10-year-old selves to run out with water guns. Connor greeted me at the door. Older, but still him. Taller, broader, hair thinning slightly, but with the same crooked smile and spark in his eyes. We talked for hours: beer, pizza, stories we'd half forgotten. By the time midnight rolled around, we were both buzzed and sleepy. "You want to just crash here?" Connor asked. "Guest room's made up." "Sure," I said. Saves me the drive. That was my mistake. The guest room was upstairs, down the hall from his childhood bedroom. I vaguely remembered it being some sort of home office back in the day, but now it had a double bed, a dresser, and a tall floor lamp that gave off soft yellow light. Cozy, but sparse. There was a wooden coat rack in the corner, right next to the closet door. One of those freestanding kinds, with long arms like twisted fingers. Hanging from it was a long, black overcoat, dusty, old-fashioned. The kind you'd expect a priest or mortician to wear. It was an odd choice for room decor, but I was too tired to care. I said goodnight, shut the door, and lay down. I remember waking up once to use the bathroom. The hallway light was still on, faintly glowing under the door. I shuffled past the dresser, rubbing my eyes, opened the door, and froze. Something was off. The coat rack. The overcoat. They weren't where they had been. Instead of standing neatly in the corner, the shape was now angled slightly forward, as if leaning toward the bed. I stared for a long second, heart ticking faster. But I was groggy. It was probably just my imagination, I told myself. Maybe I hadn't remembered it right. I went to the bathroom, came back, shut the door, laid back down. But I couldn't stop glancing at the coat, at the way it hung too low, almost dragging on the floor, at the way the arms seemed to bend slightly outward, not up, like it wasn't hanging from the rack at all, like it was standing there. I turned on my side, facing the wall. Eventually, I fell asleep. When I woke up, it was still dark, but different. The hallway light was off now. Total darkness pressed against the window, and I was lying flat on my back, which I never do. My arms were cold. I opened my eyes. The room was darker than before, but I could still make out the outlines of furniture. And in the corner, it was gone. The coat, the rack, both. I sat up slowly, every inch of my body screaming to lie back down and pretend I hadn't noticed. But I couldn't. I scanned the room, the dresser, the window, the closet. Nothing. Then my eyes drifted to the foot of the bed. There was a crease in the blanket, not one I made, like something had been resting there. I didn't breathe. A creak. Behind me. I turned just in time to see the closet door slowly swing open. Nothing dramatic. Just a slow, quiet movement, like it had never been latched to begin with. I couldn't see inside, just darkness. I grabbed my phone, tapped the flashlight. It flickered on. I aimed it at the closet. Empty. Just some shelves. Boxes. A pair of boots. And something else. A sliver of black fabric tucked behind the doorframe, like it had been caught. I stood up, heart pounding, and stepped toward it. My fingers brushed the edge. It was cold. Damp. Like skin, not cloth. I dropped it and backed away. Shut the closet. Turned on the overhead light. The coat rack was back in the corner. Just standing there, the coat draped neatly over it. Exactly as it had been when I entered the room. I didn't sleep again. The next morning, I tried to laugh it off. Maybe I was dreaming. Maybe I was drunker than I thought. Maybe I had sleep paralysis or hallucinated the entire thing. But Connor noticed something was wrong. "You good?" he asked as we drank coffee on the porch. "Yeah, just didn't sleep well," I muttered. He glanced at me, then nodded. "Guest room has that effect on people." I froze. "What do you mean?" He paused, took a sip of his drink, then said, "You remember the people who lived here before us?" "The Parkers." Vaguely. I remembered a weird old man, tall, with long gray coats and a quiet wife. They had a son, Connor continued. Lived upstairs. Bit off. Never came out much. Wore this huge black trench coat everywhere. My parents said he wasn't well. I waited. One night, he disappeared. Just gone. They searched the woods, nearby towns. Nothing. Police said he probably ran off. He paused. They found his coat, though, hanging from the ceiling fan in that room. My mouth went dry. You kept the coat? Connor shook his head. We got rid of everything. That's not his coat. I don't even remember putting that one there. I looked at him. Are you messing with me? He looked confused. Then serious. No. Why? I didn't answer. I haven't been back since. Connor and I still talk sometimes. Texts, memes, the occasional call. But when he asked if I wanted to come visit again a few months later, I told him I was busy. He laughed, said, "You're not still scared of that guest room, are you?" I laughed too, but I didn't say no. Because here's the thing. I know I didn't dream it. I know what I saw. And sometimes, when I wake up in the middle of the night, I swear I see the outline of a long black coat just standing in the corner of my room, waiting. Sweden is beautiful in the summer. The forests are alive with sound. The sky glows late into the night. There's a softness to the air, cool but not cold, scented with pine, wildflowers, and salt from the distant sea. It feels ancient, untouched in places. Safe, even. At least, that's what we told ourselves. That illusion broke for me the night we camped outside a seaside village near Hagakussen, the high coast. What started as a casual weekend trip with friends became something I still have nightmares about. Something that changed how I feel about being in the woods, especially at night. There were 4 of us. Me, my cousin Ellen, her boyfriend Jonas, and Jonas's friend Kali. We were all in our early 20s, with enough freedom to do something spontaneous, but just young enough to feel invincible. We were staying at a nearby hostel, but on our second day, Jonas suggested we sleep in the forest instead. There's a trailhead parking lot by the coast, he said. It's remote, but safe. Quiet. Locals camp there all the time. I was hesitant. I liked the idea of hiking and being out in nature, but sleeping in a forest parking lot was not my ideal vacation plan. Still, the others were excited, and I didn't want to be the buzzkill. So I agreed. We arrived at the parking area just before sunset. It was exactly how Jonas described it, secluded, surrounded by dense pine forest, with a gravel lot large enough for a few cars. To one side, a barely marked hiking trail led toward the beach. On the other side was the tree line, stretching out into the dark. We set up camp just beyond the lot, where the forest began to open into a clearing. There was a fire pit made of stones, clearly used before. We pitched 2 small tents, Jonas and Kali in one, Ellen and I in the other. The plan was to sleep there, wake up early, and do some coastal hiking. As the sun dipped below the trees, we built a small fire and sat around it, roasting bread and sharing stories. There was no cell reception, which at first felt freeing. We played music off Kali's battery speaker, passed around a cheap bottle of vodka, and laughed under the slow-fading summer sky. By midnight, we were buzzing and tired. The fire had burned low. The forest around us felt much darker now, the trees looming like silent witnesses. We doused the flames, zipped ourselves into our tents, and tried to sleep. That's when the night turned. I woke up to the sound of scraping. At first, I thought it was an animal, maybe a badger or a fox. But the rhythm was too steady. It was deliberate. Scrape. Pause. Crunch. Scrape. It sounded like a shovel. Ellen stirred beside me. "You hear that?" I whispered. She nodded, eyes wide open, already alert. We both froze, listening. The scraping stopped. Then, from deep in the trees, we heard a scream. A woman's scream. High-pitched. Terrified. Raw. It lasted only a few seconds, but it was enough to freeze every muscle in my body. We sat in the tent, clutching each other, barely breathing. Then came the footsteps. They started just outside our tent. Slow. Measured. Crunch. 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 Circling. One step at a time. Not running. Not stumbling. Walking. As if whoever, or whatever, was out there wanted us to know they were there. I reached for my phone, forgetting there was no signal. I couldn't even use the flashlight without drawing attention. We stayed still. Ellen's nails dug into my arm. The steps moved toward Jonas and Kali's tent, then faded into the forest. We lay there in silence until the gray light of early morning began to seep through the fabric. When the birds started chirping, we finally unzipped the tent. The boys were just waking up, groggy and confused. "You guys slept through all of that?" Ellen asked. "Through what?" Jonas replied, rubbing his face. "We told them everything. Scraping, the scream, the footsteps. They didn't believe us." "You probably dreamed it," Collie said, brushing crumbs off his sleeping bag. "Or it was some animal." Ellen and I looked at each other. We knew what we'd heard. That wasn't a dream, and it wasn't an animal. I needed to walk. I stepped away from the tents, toward the edge of the forest, where the sound had come from. The sun had just risen, casting long shadows between the trees. I followed a faint trail for about 20 meters when I saw it. A shallow hole, maybe 3 feet wide, half filled with loose earth. There were shovel marks in the dirt, fresh, and next to it, a torn plastic tarp, dirty, wrinkled. I didn't touch anything. I backed away slowly. My legs felt numb. When I got back to camp, I didn't tell the others. I just said I wanted to leave. Ellen didn't question me. Neither did the boys, though they were clearly annoyed their adventure was ending early. We packed up and drove back to the hostel in near silence. That night, back in my bunk bed, I couldn't sleep. So I did what I always do when something doesn't sit right. I researched. I typed the name of the forest into my phone, along with the word crime. At first, nothing. Then I found an old article archived and barely formatted. August 2014. The remains of a missing woman were found less than 2 kilometers from the parking lot where we camped. No official suspect. No confirmed cause of death. Just an active investigation. I kept scrolling. There were rumors on Swedish forums. Locals talking about that part of the coast. Whispers about people going missing. Hikers never returning. Weird sounds at night. Digging. Screams. I didn't sleep for the rest of that night. Ellen and I never talked about what we heard again. I think it scared her more than she let on. Jonas and Collie still tease us about it, but never with real conviction. Because deep down, I think they believe it too. We were not alone that night. Someone or something was watching, circling, digging, and whatever it was, it had done it before. Sometimes, when I close my eyes at night, I still hear it. That single scream, torn from the throat of someone who didn't want to be found. And in the background, the sound of a shovel. When I was around 11 years old, my younger brother and I shared a room on the second floor of our old house in the countryside of the UK. It was a modest place, 2 stories, creaky stairs, peeling wallpaper in the hallway, and a leaky faucet in the upstairs bathroom that never quite got fixed. Our room was small but cozy. We had bunk beds, me on the top, my brother on the bottom, and a single window that looked out over the back garden. Our parents' room was down the hall, just past the bathroom, and the staircase curved gently down to the ground floor, which held the living room, kitchen, and front door. It was an ordinary house. A little too drafty in winter, a little too quiet at night. But it had never felt unsafe. That changed the night I heard our mother calling to us from downstairs. It started like any other evening. We'd spent the day at school, played football in the garden until the sun dipped low, then ate dinner with our parents and watched some TV before being sent to bed around 9:30. I remember my brother had fallen asleep quickly, curled under his blankets with a stuffed rabbit clutched in one arm. I lay awake for a while, eyes drifting across the ceiling, listening to the usual night sounds, the tick of the radiator, the distant murmur of the television downstairs, the occasional groan of the house settling. Eventually, the house went quiet. The kind of silence that only settles in rural places, where the nearest neighbor is a field away and the only car you'll hear all night is your own. I was starting to doze off when I heard it. A voice. Faint, distant, but clear. Boys. It came from downstairs. A woman's voice. Familiar. Gentle. Our mom's voice. At first, I didn't think much of it. Maybe she needed something. Maybe she wanted us to come down and help with something she forgot. Maybe she'd made tea and changed her mind about letting us stay up a bit longer, like she sometimes did on weekends. I sat up in bed. My brother stirred, blinking sleepily. "Did you hear that?" I whispered. He nodded. "Boys, come here, please." This time it was louder. Still calm. Still motherly. But something about the tone wasn't quite right. It was too flat. Too slow. Like someone trying to imitate comfort. I leaned over and whispered, "Mom?" No response. I looked across the room. The hallway light was off, but I could see the soft amber glow of the stair light filtering up from below. That wasn't unusual. Our parents often left the stair light on at night in case we needed the toilet. But the voice continued. "Boys, I need you. Come down." This time, the words were clearer, but colder, more forced. Each syllable pronounced too cleanly, like they'd been practiced. My brother sat up in bed. He looked scared, not just because it was late or because it was dark, but because he felt it too, that wrongness in the voice. He whispered, "Why doesn't she come up?" That's when I really started to feel it. The skin on the back of my neck prickled. I glanced toward the door. Nothing. I slowly got out of bed, crept toward the hallway, and leaned out just far enough to see the top of the stairs. The light was still on, but the bottom of the staircase was pitch black, like the light just stopped existing after a certain point, and standing just beyond the last visible step was a figure. I didn't see much, just the faintest outline of a woman, not moving, just there, staring. Her head was tilted slightly to the side, like someone trying to figure out what they're looking at. Her hands hung at her sides, fingers splayed unnaturally wide. "Come here," she said again. Same voice, same deadpan tone. This time I felt it like a command, not a request. My brother whimpered behind me, and that's when I noticed something that chilled me to the bone. Our mother's bedroom door down the hall was slightly ajar, and I could see the soft flicker of her bedside lamp inside. She was in there, sleeping. I'd heard her cough minutes earlier. So who was standing at the bottom of the stairs? Who was calling us? The figure moved, just a fraction. A small, jerky motion, like a marionette pulled the wrong way. That was all I needed. I turned, grabbed my brother by the wrist, and shut the bedroom door. We locked it, wedged a chair under the handle. Then we sat on the bed and didn't speak for the rest of the night. We didn't sleep. We barely breathed. We sat huddled together, the room dark and silent, listening for any sound of the thing downstairs trying to come up. But it never did. No creaks, no steps, no voice, nothing. When morning came and sunlight flooded the room, we finally moved. We ran to our parents' bedroom and found them both still asleep. Mom was confused. She said she hadn't been downstairs since dinner. Said she'd gone to bed early, and the stair light had probably just been left on. We didn't tell her. We didn't tell anyone. But a few days later, my brother drew a picture in one of his notebooks. It was simple crayons and colored pencils. 2 boys, a stairwell, and at the bottom, a woman with no face, just a blank oval where features should have been. Her arms were too long, and her fingers were sharp. The drawing is long gone now, but I remember every detail. I still don't know what it was. Some people might say it was a dream, or night terrors, or a shared hallucination. But I know what I saw, what I heard, and I've never trusted voices calling from dark places since, because sometimes they sound like the people you love, but they're not. I grew up in a small, safe neighborhood on the outskirts of town, the kind of place where people still wave to each other, doors stay unlocked during the day, and kids ride their bikes until the streetlights flicker on. My street curved gently like a horseshoe, lined with birch trees and tidy houses, each one with the same brick driveway and chain-link fence. I was 16 when this happened, old enough to walk home alone, young enough to still believe that nothing truly bad could ever happen to me. I took that walk all the time. It was barely 15 minutes from the local community center where I did after-school activities, and even less if I cut through the back field. But that night, I took the long way home, and I still regret it. It had been a normal evening. I stayed behind at the center later than usual because I was helping with a small event, a bake sale or a fundraiser, something forgettable in itself. I didn't notice how late it had gotten until I was locking up and saw how empty the streets were. No cars, no people, just the buzz of the overhead street lamp. It was around 9:30 p.m., not too late, but late enough for the quiet to feel strange. I remember pulling my hoodie tight around me and turning down the main road that would eventually lead home. The sky was clear, and the moon was just bright enough to light up the sidewalk. That's when I saw him. He was on the opposite side of the street, not walking, standing still. At first, I didn't even think he was watching me. He was half hidden in the shadows between 2 parked cars. He didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there. I picked up my pace. I didn't want to look paranoid, but I also didn't want to look vulnerable. I kept my steps fast, but even, eyes locked forward. I glanced back once. He was following me now. I crossed the street. So did he. I turned the corner onto Westwood Lane, which was the quietest stretch before my neighborhood. He kept his distance, maybe 20 or 30 feet behind, but I could hear his footsteps now. Steady, measured, not rushed, like he had time. I told myself 100 things. Maybe he just lives in the same direction. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe. Then he said something. I didn't quite catch it at first. It was soft, like a mumble. I looked over my shoulder. He repeated it. Nice night for a walk, huh? That's when I really looked at him for the first time. He was tall, maybe 6 feet 3 inches, dressed in black jeans and a dark green hoodie. Not particularly dirty or ragged, just bland, average, forgettable in a way that felt almost intentional. But his eyes, there was something off about them. Too wide, too direct. He was staring at me like he already knew me, like he'd been waiting. I didn't answer him. I just turned and kept walking faster now. My heart was pounding. My throat was dry. Then he spoke again. You live around here, don't you? I broke into a jog. Not quite running. Not yet. But enough to send the message. He didn't chase. He didn't raise his voice. He just laughed. Low. Soft. Like he knew a joke I didn't. I turned onto Bertrow Drive, my street, and finally sprinted the last 100 feet to my house. I fumbled with my keys, hands shaking, and got the door open just as I heard his voice again, this time closer. I'll see you around. I slammed the door, locked it, and immediately turned off all the lights. I crawled on the floor to the window and peered out through the curtain. The street was empty. He was gone. I stayed there for a long time, listening, barely breathing. Eventually, I convinced myself it was over. A weird encounter. A creepy guy. But that wasn't the end. Not even close. That night, sometime after midnight, I was still wide awake, scrolling through my phone with the volume off. My window faced the street, and from my second-floor room, I could see the tops of cars and the birch trees swaying under the streetlight. Then I saw movement. A figure standing across the street, just looking at the house. I froze. He didn't do anything. Didn't shout. Didn't knock. He just stood there, head tilted slightly upward, toward my window. I dropped down below the sill, heart racing. I didn't dare peek again, but I sat there on the floor, knees pulled to my chest, until the light outside finally flicked off with the automated timer. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I told my mom. She believed me, which honestly surprised me. We reported it to the police. An officer came by, took my statement, and said they'd patrol the neighborhood for the next few nights. But there wasn't much they could do. No crime had been committed. Just a man. Just a voice. Just a stare. A few nights later, I was sitting at my desk doing homework when I heard scraping. Not outside. From inside the house. Specifically, from the front door. I crept down the stairs, quiet as I could, and listened. The sound was faint, but real. Like something pressing or dragging against the wood. I backed away, step by step, until I was upstairs again. Then my phone buzzed. An unknown number. No message. Just one missed call. I didn't sleep that night either. For weeks after, I kept seeing him. Not close. Not obvious. But in the background. At the gas station. Near the bus stop. Once, walking past the school gates just as classes let out. He never said anything again. Never came close. But he was always looking up, scanning windows, rooftops, balconies. Like he was searching. And each time, I wondered. Was it me he was looking for? Eventually, it stopped. Or maybe I just stopped noticing. He disappeared from view. Life moved on. But a year later, on a foggy October evening, my mom found something odd while cleaning out the garage. An envelope. No address. No stamp. Just our last name written on it. Inside was a single photograph. Taken from the street. A blurry picture of my bedroom window. And in the reflection on the glass, me, staring back. But here's the part that still makes my blood run cold. The photo had been taken from the exact same height as my window, meaning whoever took it wasn't on the ground. I've always lived alone, not because I don't like people, but because I like silence. I like knowing the dishes in the sink are mine, that no one else is coming in and out, that when I lock my door, it stays locked until I unlock it. That sense of control is part of the reason I chose the apartment. It was nothing special, just a small second-floor unit in an old brick building downtown. But it was clean, quiet, and the rent was dirt cheap for what it offered. There were 4 floors total, Mine was on the second, right above the entrance. There was someone below me, and someone directly above me in 3B. The top floor was vacant when I moved in. Or so I thought. The first time I noticed something strange, I'd been living there for about a month. It was a Wednesday night, maybe 10:30 p.m. I was reading on the couch when I heard footsteps from the apartment above me, 3B. Heavy, deliberate, slow. It wasn't the occasional creak of an old building settling. These were measured, rhythmic steps, like someone pacing back and forth across the floor. It went on for maybe 10 minutes, then stopped. I didn't think much of it. Maybe someone had just moved in and I hadn't seen them yet. People keep to themselves in buildings like this. But the next night, it happened again. And again the next. Always around 10:30. Always slow. Always stopping after exactly 10 minutes. I never heard any other noise, no TV, no music, no conversations. Just those footsteps. Like someone walking the length of the room over and over. Eventually, curiosity got the better of me. That Saturday, I went upstairs and knocked on 3B. No answer. I knocked again. Pressed my ear to the door. Silence. But just as I turned to leave, I thought I heard something shift, like the shuffle of feet just beyond the door. I waited another few seconds, then walked away. The next day, I asked the landlord about the unit. He was an old guy, barely seemed to remember who lived where. 3B, he muttered, rubbing his chin. No, that one's empty. Has been for months. You want to transfer up there or something? I shook my head. No, just curious. I keep hearing footsteps late at night. He raised an eyebrow but didn't ask further. Probably the pipes, he said. But it wasn't the pipes. That night, I stayed up with all the lights off and listened. Sure enough, 10:30 p.m., like clockwork. Step, 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 back and forth. Same pace, same rhythm. I recorded it on my phone. Sent it to a friend. They told me it sounded like boots on hardwood. I knocked on the ceiling with a broom handle. The steps stopped. For a long moment, I thought maybe I'd scared off whatever it was. Then I heard 3 knocks. Back. Right above me. Perfectly timed. Perfectly spaced. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I went back to 3B. Still no answer. I thought about asking the downstairs neighbor if they'd ever heard anything, but they moved out the following week. Never saw them again. Just a note on the door that said unit vacant. After that, the footsteps started getting stranger. Some nights they were faster. Other nights they came earlier. Once, I swear I heard breathing. Heavy, labored, like someone standing right above where I sat. Then one night, around 2 a.m., I heard something new. Dragging. Like something heavy being pulled across the floor above me. Not once. Not twice. But for hours. I banged on the ceiling. Silence. Then a loud thud. Right over my bedroom. I didn't go back to sleep. The next morning, I went up to 3B again. This time, I brought a screwdriver and a thin pry tool. The landlord hadn't changed the locks in ages. It didn't take much. I got the door open. The apartment was cold. Dust covered. Empty. The air smelled stale, like it hadn't been breathed in for years. No furniture. No carpet. Just bare hardwood floors and faint grooves worn into the wood. From pacing. Back and forth. Back and forth. And near the back window, I saw something else. Boot prints. Perfectly preserved in a layer of dust. But only one set. No signs of entry or exit. I left quickly and locked the door behind me. I didn't tell the landlord. Didn't tell anyone. I just stopped going up there. But the sounds continued, and they started to change. Now, the footsteps came down the wall, into the hallway, across my ceiling, and then along the stairs. One night, I heard them stop at my door. I sat on the couch, lights off, staring at the doorknob, watching it tremble, just slightly. Then silence. No knock this time. Just that awful, awful quiet. I started staying with friends, making excuses, sleeping in my car, until the landlord called me one morning and said I had to come back. There had been a complaint, something leaking from my ceiling into the downstairs unit. When I got there, the building was quiet. Too quiet. I unlocked the door to my apartment and stepped in. The floor was wet. Not soaked, just damp. Cold. I looked up. There was a dark patch on the ceiling, right above the couch. It dripped slowly. The liquid was brown-red. Sticky. I ran upstairs to 3B, heart pounding. Forced the door open. Still empty. But this time, in the center of the floor, someone had written a word in the dust. Below. I moved out that night. Didn't wait for my deposit. Didn't say goodbye. To this day, I don't know what was in 3B, or what it wanted, but sometimes, late at night in my new apartment across the city, I still hear footsteps above me, and when I check with the neighbors, they always say the same thing. No one lives up there.